Let's bring in John Hardie, Russia Program Deputy Director for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. John, President Trump says after that high-stakes call with Putin, Russia and Ukraine will, quote, immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. Can they come to a compromise to end the war? And I ask that in a cynical way because right after that phone call, when the phone call ended, Russia sent more than 100 drones into Ukraine for more death and destruction. So for our viewers, John, make this make sense.
Well, Joe, thanks for having me on. I think, unfortunately, the chances of a peace deal are still pretty slim, and they get even slimmer if President Trump disengages, as he already seems to be doing. His line is that he'll pull back if he doesn't see progress. Well, based on what he said today in public and in private to European leaders, it seems like he already wants to sort of disengage from the process. I think if you look back to the brief moment of consensus we had a couple weeks ago with President Trump, European leaders, Zelensky, on a path forward, it was demand a ceasefire if Russia continues to refuse, impose harsher sanctions. President Trump quickly broke away from that consensus, unfortunately, and yesterday seems to have been satisfied with what for Putin was really a reiteration of his existing demands and proposals. So really not much progress, and it's frustrating that President Trump will not start to bring out some sticks.
All right, John, when we're talking about words like progress, we're talking about ceasefire, we're talking about compromise. It is all up to, and then fill in the blank.
Well, I think the Ukrainians have shown willingness to compromise. They've certainly shown willingness to accept the ceasefire. Right now, the ones who won't are the Russians. And I think that, President Trump has tried carrots and luring the Russians to the table, luring them to make compromises, and Putin just isn't going to do that. So I think he's going to have to be compelled. There has to be, a tangible form of pressure. And the best person to do that is President Trump. Europe will try to do it alone if it has to, but the impact will be much less without the United States.
Does this make sense to you? Most surprisingly, the president indicated Pope Leo XIV has offered the Vatican to host ceasefire talks. Listen to this.
There's tremendous bitterness, anger, and I think maybe that could help some of that anger. So having it at the Vatican would be, in Rome, would be I think it'd be a great idea.
Could the Vatican be what helps turn the tide of this war towards peace? And we're talking about for Putin, that is, because we know Zelensky has showed up several times and he's willing to do whatever it takes. So is the United States. But Putin is still the holdout, correct?
That's right. And, I think the location where they hold the talks is much less important than the substance and the pressure that's put on the Russians to make compromises. I mean, right now, the Russians are continuing offensive operations, continuing drone and missile strikes in Ukraine. According to different assessments, they seem to be gearing up to intensify those offensive operations into the summer and fall. So they're showing no signs of readiness for compromise. And I think we're going to have to take some steps to change Putin's mind because he's not going to do it on his own.
And just to remind viewers, February 2020 is when this engagement started again for Russia versus Ukraine. John Hardie, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your insight.